experience in training, especially sa youth training. Meron na akong pakiusap sa inyo kasi alam niyo naman, tayong mga mababait na asawang lalaki. Pag nagpupunta ka, kasi yung misis ko po, nagtatrabaho pa kahit na sila na pwede na retire o wala. Ayaw sa pakawalan ng kanya opisina kasi kailangan para siya doon. At alam niyo yung naiintindihan ko yung mga asawang babae. They always request for proof na nandito tayo. Ayaw na maniwala na magle-lecture mo ngayong umaga. Ba't ka na naman magle-lecture tapos na yung pag-lecture mo, di ba? 40 years na. So can I ask for a special favor? Kukuha ko kasi kayo ng litrato. Hindi papadala ko agad sa Facebook. Talagang nagsasalita ako before an assembly. So can you raise your hand? Okay. Thank you very much. Alam mo tayo mga lalaki, nagtatakang-tapakan, pero may tunay na commander. Hindi mo ba? Anyway, please listen carefully to this presentation and don't bother to take pictures because the presentation will be available to you, including the script. This is binabalidate natin ito. This will be a standard presentation. First, for this strand under the Office of the Undersecretary for Administration. This should take some 45 minutes to 50 minutes by experience. Development Order number 36, Series 2013. The meaning and message of our DepEd vision, mission, values should be carefully explained to all DepEd employees and key stakeholders. Have you experienced this before? Be honest. Have you been lectured? Have you been invited to workshops, assemblies, tackling the vision, mission, and values of DepEd? Those, sino yung mga nakaano na? Please raise your right hand. Be honest. No one. Can you imagine, this was in 2013, this memo was signed by the former secretary. So, the DepEd vision is, we dream of Filipinos who passionately love their country and whose values and competencies enable them to realize their full potential and contribute meaningfully to building the nation. Hindi lang love of country, passionately pa. The core values of DepEd, do you know them? Be honest, do you know them? Okay. They are makadiyos, makatao, makakalikasan, and makabansa. Okay, the core values of DepEd are, or is actually the motto of the country and government too. Do you know that? Republic Act 8491, prescribing the code of the national flag, anthem, motto, coat of arms, and other heraldic items and devices of the Philippines. Chapter 3, Section 40, provides for the national motto, which is makadiyos, makatao, makakalikasan, Chapter 5 provides for the design of the Great Seal. Great Seal, ginagamit ito ng mga official documents ng Office of the President at saka yung ibang authorized offices. The Great Seal, where the national motto has been incorporated, nandun sa ibaba. So we proceed now to the main subject matter, which we call correlating values for programs and learning activities. By correlating, we mean showing the connection or establishing mutual or reciprocal relation for certain purposes and goals. The national motto or the DepEd core values are on page 3 of the new Philippine passport. Meaning, the core values are part of the Filipino identity as manifested by the Philippine passport. The core values comprise the kapwa Pilipino. Kapwa Pilipino is shared identity characterized by the core values of mga Diyos, mga tao, mga kalikasan, at mga bansa. Basic tenets of kapwa according to Filipino psychologists. Kapwa is shared inner self, the core of Filipino personhood is kapwa. This notion of a shared self extends to the I to include the other. Kapwa is the core construct of Filipino psychology. Kapwa has two categories, ibang tao and hindi ibang tao. Kapwa is the unity of the one us and the other, according to the late Virgilio Enriquez, who declared the concept as a Filipino core value. He upheld that kapwa implied moral and normative aspects that oblige a person to treat one another as fellow human being and therefore as equal, a position definitely inconsistent with exploitative human interactions. But Enriquez also foresaw that this Filipino core value was threatened by spreading Western influences when he wrote, "Once a Ko starts thinking of himself as separate from kapwa, the Filipino self gets to be individuated as in the Western sense, and in effect denies the status of kapwa to the other." Enriquez, 1989. So we need the concept of a nation. This is where the word nationalism comes from, the advocacy of the national interest of the nation. So nationalism is the advocacy, the promotion, the persevering pursuit of what is good for the nation. What we should teach the youth and what we inculcate in their minds. The new Filipino nationalism, makabansa, characterized by the fervor to free the people from poverty and guided by the core values of mga Diyos, mga tao, mga kalikasan. The bansa o mga bansa, as used among the core values promoted by DepEd and government, can only refer to the bansang Pilipinas as defined by the Constitution. Makabansa, therefore, forms the heart of our new Filipino nationalism. 673,000 families still experience hunger in 2016. Again, the new Filipino nationalism, mga bansa, that can truly unite the country is characterized by the fervor to free the people from poverty. The correlation of core values must strengthen that foundation and provide the guides for all efforts to to achieve that. So what is the difference between nationalism and patriotism? Patriotism involves sacrifice. The sacrifices that our teachers make so that no school-age child is left behind in education qualify them as patriots. This teacher walked several kilometers, crossed rivers, just to reach 3 learners. Kapwa Pilipino with shared identity of being mga Diyos, mga tao, mga kalikasan ng mga bansa is what Filipino nationalism stands and struggles for. It is in this struggle that sacrifices are made. This is the essence of patriotism. The Youth Formation Division has introduced in its trainings and discussion of core values with historical perspective. From the experiences of our heroes and their legacy of patriotism and ideals, the historical basis of the core values of DepEd is explored. At the start of the discussion, we asked the trainees or audience, sino ang naiisip niyong bayani kapag binanggit ang pagiging mga Diyos? Sino naisip niya? Come on! Wala kayong alam ng mga heroes? Yes, sir. Sino? Gambusa. Sino? Another one. Another volunteer, please. Hindi na wala mga heroes natin. Hindi na alam sino mga Diyos sa kanila. Ha? Okay. Seriously, who was the hero in your mind then when I asked that question? From our experience in YFD, some answered Gambusa, and others mentioned San Lorenzo Ruiz, even Coreaquino, Gregorio Lipay, but most could hardly give a name. It was a rare moment when one mentioned Andres Bonifacio in relation to the core value ng Diyos. Mahalin mo ang Diyos ng buong puso. This is the first rules. This is the first in the rules or value ethics that God Andres Bonifacio incorporated in his Decalogue. Decalogue was a list of 10 commandments for the members of the Katipunan. Since the Katipunan was the core of an emerging new and independent bansa, the Decalogue of Bonifacio was the early stage of lawmaking for the bansa. We can imagine Bonifacio seriously pondering what the Filipinos value most at that time and what is good for them before he wrote his Decalogue. While Bonifacio rose in arms against the Spanish colonizers, including the friars who brought Catholicism to the colony, apparently he never abandoned his faith in God. We easily remember his raised bolo of ultimate patriotism, but we miss to appreciate his being mga Diyos first and foremost. Still from Decalogue, second in the list. Pakatandaan lagi na ang pag-ibig sa Diyos ay siya rin pag-ibig sa tinubuan at yan din ang pag-ibig sa kapwa. Bonifacio during his time was already correlating the 3 main core values of mga Diyos, mga bansa, and mga tao in defining the sublime love that Filipinos should develop. Remember Bonifacio's point that goes, is there a love that's nobler, purer, and more sublime than the love of the native country? Do you remember that? Dr. Penelope Flores, Professor of Education Emeritus at San Francisco State University, wrote that the 1896 revolution was also the beginning of the recognition of the identity of the Filipino, no longer Indio, the way we recall by the colonizers then. Filipinos began to see themselves as a nation and aspired to fight Spain as a nation. Earlier revolts had been attempted to redress specific injustices, but this time the people stopped looking at Spain as the mother country and considered Filipinas as their motherland or inang bayan. Do you know that, according to Dr. Flores also wrote that it was Bonifacio who first translated Rizal's Mi Ultimo Adios into Tagalog. She added that in 1898, those under the rule of the Katipunan already numbered in millions, something like 5 million. And the Katipuneros recited that poem of Rizal in the battlefields. It was Bonifacio's translation that made Ultimo Adios accessible to the common masses. Do we know that? Pagkalam lang natin kay Bonifacio ay nagtitinda ng papaypay. But he could read in 3 languages. Then we have Mabini. Una, ibigin mo ang Diyos at ang iyong puri ng lalo sa lahat ng bagay. The core value mga Diyos was also number 1 in Mabini's own El Verdadero Decalogo or True Decalogue. Mabini was closer to the Aguinaldo faction of the Katipunan and wrote his own version of 10 Commandments for members of the for members and their constituents to follow. Ika-4, ibigin mo ang iyong inang bayan, ikalawa sa Diyos at sa iyong puri at higit sa iyong sarili, sapagkat siya ang nakaisa-isang paraisong pinaglagyan sa iyo ng Diyos sa buhay na ito. Mabini was already presenting the hierarchy of core values. Diyos before inang bayan before sarili. Ngunit papaano magiging makatao ang sarili? Sinagot ito mismo ni Mabini. Ikatlo sa kanyang El Verdadero Decalogo, dagdagan mong pilit ang talos ng isip at katutubong alam na ipinagkaloob ng Diyos sa iyo sa pamamagitan ng pag-aaral at magsumakit ka ng lubos lakas sa gawang kahit kinahihiligan ng iyong loob, upang maipon sa iyo ang lalong maraming kagalingan at sa ganitong paraay makatulong ka sa ikasusulong ng lahat. Kaya kung gusto mo maging makatao, makatulong ka sa kapwa mo, huwag ka magpakatamad, mag-aral ka, magpakagaling ka, para magsabi mong tunay na gusto mong tumulong sa kapwa mo. Makatao, pagsisikap ng sarili upang makatulong sa lahat ng kapwa Pilipino. Mabini was a great statesman. He knew what Filipinos value most that would guide them in bansa building. He was already describing what Filipino nationalism and Filipino democracy should be. In his ikatlo, pagpilitan mo ang kalayaan ng iyong bayan bago ang iyong sarili, sapagkat kung malaya siya ay lalaya rin ikaw at ang iyong kamag-anakan. Ika-6, pagpilitan mo ang kasarinlan ng iyong bayan, sapagkat ikaw lamang ang tunay na makapagmamalasakit sa kanyang ikasusulong at ikakatanghal. Mabini was a staunch Republican.
or a strong believer in a form of government in which representatives are elected and there is no monarch. Ikapito, huwag mong kilalanin sa loob ng iyong bayan ang kapangyarihan ng sinumang tao ay hindi inilagay ninyong magkakabayan. Ang taong ituro at ihalal ng mga konsyensya ng sangkabayanan ang siya lamang makapagtataglay ng tunay na kapangyarihan. Ikawalo, iahanap mong pilit ang iyong bayan ng republika, yaong baga ang lahat ng namamahala ay palagay ng bayan, at huwag isipin kailanman ang monarkiya, ang pagkakaroon baga ng hari, sapagkat ang hari ay walang binibigyan ng kamahalan, kundi isa o ilang ang kanlamang. Ulitin ko, ilang ang kanlamang. Sounds like dynasty. With the above, Malini defined for us the basic essence and nature of the emerging bansa for and run by Filipinos. Ambet Ocampo, historian and columnist, wrote, "It is unfortunate that Mabini has been reduced to a disabled man in a wheelchair because many of his writings remain relevant over a century since they first were written." I remember hearing about Mabini's verdadero decalogo in school, but we were not made to understand how important these 10 points are in our continuing search for nation and nationhood. Mabini took the 10 commandments as a model instead of picking another random number like 7 or 69. This is the original document signed by Andres Bonifacio, also known as May Pag-asa, Pangulo ng Haring Bayang Katagalugan, may tayo ng KKK, at unang naggalaw ng paghihimagsik, appointing Emilio Jacinto as Pangulong Hukbo sa Dakong Hilaga ng Maynila. Jacinto represented the army of the emerging bansa, and the army is one major component of state sovereignty. It is the army that enforces the rules and the law that will govern. Jacinto wrote the Kartilya ng Katipunan, and Bonifacio thought it was better than his Decalogo, and so Bonifacio adopted it. And number one in Jacinto's Kartilya is the importance of banal na kadahilanan in life. He did not use the term Diyos, but the essence of the core value of mga Diyos was very apparent. Jacinto elaborated on what kabanalan meant. Sa ikatlo, ang tunay na kabanalan ay ang pagkakawang gawa, ang pag-ibig sa kapwa, at ang isukat ang bawat kilos, gawa't pangungusap sa talagang katwiran. Kabanalan, mga Diyos. Pagkakawang gawa, mga tao. Pag-ibig sa kapwa Pilipino, yan ang makabayan o makabansa. Ano ang sinabi ng Biblia? Nakahalin tulad nito. Proverbs 19:17. One who is gracious to a poor man lends to the Lord, and He will repay him for his good deed. Matthew 25:40. The king will reply, "Truly I tell you, whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me." Do we have anything from the Quran? Al-Quran 41:34. Good and evil deeds are not equal. Repel evil with what is better. Then you will see that one who was once your enemy has become your dearest friend. Al-Quran 16:91. Indeed, Allah enjoins justice and the doing of good to others, and giving that kindred, and forbids indecency and manifest evil and wrongful transgression. He admonished you that you may take heed. From the other influences, that came into the country. Do we have anything more? Buddhism, Udarabarga, 518, 560 before Christ. Hurt not others with that which pains yourself. Hinduism, 3200 before Christ. From the book Hitopadesa, one should always treat others as they themselves wish to be treated. Confucianism, 557 before Christ. Analects, 1523. What you do not want done to yourself, do not do to others. Sounds familiar. What is that? The golden rule. So, maka-Diyos, value based on belief in supreme being. Mahirap naman yata maging maka-Diyos na hindi ka naniniwala sa isang supreme being. Value based on belief in God who is on the side of good. Sir, bakit meron ba on the side of bad? May mga sumasamba sa ibang God eh. Sa Amerika nga, mayroong sumasamba kay Satanas, Satanismo. Dito yata, meron din. And on belief that man and all things are God's creation. It is also the main source of our lakas ng loob, di ba? Pag na marami tayong problema, kanino tayo pupunta? Nagdadasal sa Diyos. And finally, it is the motivation for non-violence. What about Makatao? Makatao also springs from belief in God who created man, and all things. It is a recognition of equal rights sa mga kapwa Pilipino. It reflects the rationale for Filipino democracy that recognizes both differences and equal rights of kapwa Pilipino. It is the strongest motivation for peaceful change that would tackle equitable distribution of the country's wealth. Sorry. What about mga kalikasan? It is actually an indigenous value that also springs from belief in the supreme being who created man and all things around him. Before the colonizers came, as you know, yung mga IPs natin, yung mga natives, also meron silang parang, they also believe in supreme being, no? Kaya mahal nila ang kalikasan. Kasi ang tingin nila, binigay na yun ng supreme being, kaya para sila mabuhay. It is a much-needed value to strengthen resolve to address climate change at present time. Specifically, it is a core value that will strengthen our resolve as a people to protect the country's natural resources, primarily for all kapwa Filipinos. So, how are the core values correlated and integrated in programs and activities of DepEd? First, as determinants of direction setting guides in planning, inclusion of DMB, we call that DMB, vision, mission, and values of DepEd. And as part of opening orientation, such as this, a great opportunity to infuse the core values into trainings and assemblies, and reflect from them the objectives and expectations. And reflect them from objectives and expectation. They could be actual output of program activities in terms of measurable learnings, life, and social skills, like in our trainings in YFD. But most important of all, as guide for behavior of both implementers and participants like us. Our value ethics in DepEd. Dapat palaging malinaw sa ating lahat ang mga bagay na yan. Ganyan karami ang nahuhulog sa buhay. These pictures were taken during the time of President Duterte, 17 and early 18. Armed with core values, the DepEd embarks on a concerted effort to address the drug problem. Secretary Leonor Marcoles Briones, in her policy statement titled "The Eradication of the Drug Scourge is Our Patriotic Duty," said, "In this regard, we want the core values of mga Diyos, mga tao, mga bansa, and makakalikasan to serve as the basic foundation of our youth formation programs and activities to effectively counter the appeal of illegal drugs." One picture was taken in a camp of the New People's Army, and the other I took during the Negros Island Nation of Heroes event in La Carlota City, attended by some 4,500 learners. In a colorful way, the collage shows the ideological challenge of extremism in youth formation, especially in the far-flung areas of the countryside. But it is basically a competition between sets of fundamental values. You cannot kill an ideology with arms. You can only overcome an ideology with a superior ideology, or at least a more relevant or appropriate set of fundamental values. In the case of the ideological challenge of the extreme left, it is a godless ideology that promotes absolute selflessness versus the new Filipino nationalism that we have, founded on the core values of mga Diyos, mga tao, mga kalikasan, that should build a comparable commitment. Makakalikasan is the Filipino contribution to the internationalism of addressing climate change. The communists have their own internationalism or international. And it is the worldwide support for the struggle so that the dictatorship of the proletariat represented by the Communist Party could gain state power. The ideological challenge of extremism requires tit-for-tat approach addressing primarily a set of fundamental values with historical perspective, vision of the future, and democratic way of changing and building society. And our heroes have described to us what Filipino nationalism and Filipino democracy should be. They started the struggle to free us from direct rule of foreign powers. We now continue that same struggle to free all our kapwa Filipinos from domestic constraints that deny them the quality of life and educational opportunities they deserve as people of a truly independent nation. We can learn from other nations and societies, but at the heart of our own struggle as one Filipino nation are our core values, mga Diyos, mga tao, mga kalikasan, mga bansa. And in DepEd, this is the core essence of our so-called liberating education. That address, when it Bonifacius Coin, Pag-ibig sa Tinuruang Bayan. Translated from Tagalog by Emmanuel de los Santos. Here is the abridged version. Is there any love that is nobler, purer, and more sublime than the love of the native country? What love is, and then none. To give the fatherland boundless honor is a purpose of all who are worthy, and who sing or compose or make verses to spread their country's glory. There is nothing worth having the patriot will give for his native land. Blood and wealth and knowledge and effort, even life to be crushed and taken. Why? What thing of infinite greatness is this, that only should be bended before it, that it should be held higher than the things more precious, even life? Ah, the land that gave us birth, like a mother, and from her alone came the blessed grace like the suns that warmed the benumbed body. With the love of country are coupled all dreams and all ideas, from joyful restless childhood till the grave receives the body, and happy the exile from his country. His mind, full of sad recollections, haunted by anxious longing. For the land where stood his cradle, misfortune and death seemed lighter. And when we suffered them for our country, and the more that for it we suffer, the more our love grows. Oh, marvel! Our land with dangers threatened, and help must be quickly forthcoming. Children, wife, and parents and brothers at her first call we must abandon. Come ye who have been living of future felicity dreaming, and have tasted naught but sorrow, come! Love your unhappy country. Ye who have lost the fruit and the flower of the trees of this life, withered early by so many perplexing sorrows, revive and succor your country. Unto her in Holocaust loving, the last drop of your blood you must offer. If to free her your life you have given, yours is glory then, and redemption. Thank you.